Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all of you. My dear students, I hope you all are in good health and taking much care of you and your family. So today we are going to discuss one of the important topics that is that has a very important value in the history of Pakistan. That is the influence of Islam. Basically, this is the chapter 2 of your books, and we are going to do the first part, a part of this chapter, that is Shah Waliullah's reform movement. It means basically we are going to discuss Shah Waliullah as he was an important figure in the history of Pakistan. So, I know most of the students are not having the books along with them, but you all are requested to listen to this lecture carefully because each and every detail is added here, each and every detail about Shah Waliullah is discussed here. So listen to it and save a copy or download a copy of this lecture in your devices so that you may use it in your future. So the learning objective of today's lesson is to be able to know Shah Waliullah as an important figure to influence Muslims of India. He influenced Muslims of India. How he influenced? Let's read it in next slides. Here you can see in Shah Waliullah's reform movement. Talking about Shah Waliullah, there are certain subtopics that we have to cover in today's lesson. First one is introduction of Shah Waliullah. We are going to know about Shah Waliullah first, and then according to Shah Waliullah, what was the role of Islam? Then problems of Muslims. What were some problems that Muslims were facing at the time of Shah Waliullah, and then influence of Shah Waliullah on Muslims. What was the influence that he left on the Muslims of India? He means Shah Waliullah. And the last subtopic is an important figure in the history. We will discuss how he is considered an important person in the history of Pakistan. If you talk about the introduction of Shah Waliullah, basically by the end of Aurangzeb's reign, the authority of Mughal emperors was facing decline. Although Muslims were pleased by Aurangzeb's rule according to Islam, but it provoked anger and revolt from other religious groups, especially the Hindus. There was, as Muslim empire started to have a decline after the death of Aurangzeb, Muslim empire started to have a decline, but this decline caused a revolt, and Muslim strategies, especially the strategies of Aurangzeb, the rule of Aurangzeb, caused many other religious groups to revolt against Muslim, and especially there were Hindus on the priority. Shah Waliullah was born shortly before the end of Aurangzeb's rule or Aurangzeb's reign, and grew up at a time when Muslims felt increasingly threatened and helpless. He belonged to a religious family. His father was, you may say, his father was a religious advisor to the emperor, a religious advisor to Aurangzeb. He studied in Arabia. He spent some years to study the Islamic knowledge in Arabia. Then he was blessed with a vision of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was studying in Saudi Arabia, at that time he had been blessed with a vision of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he felt inspired to organize and to give spiritual leadership to Muslims in the subcontinent. He decided to come back from Arabia to India. When I talk about when I use the word India, it does not mean the current India. It means in this chapter, India means the subcontinent. India means Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. The present day Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So India here means the whole subcontinent. So he decided to come back from Arabia to India to give spiritual leadership to all the Muslims. Second subtopic is what did Shah Waliullah believe should be the role of Islam? What should be the role of Islam according to Shah Waliullah in the life of the people? He was of the view that Islam should direct every aspect of life, whether it's political, economic, or social. Islam should have the role in every aspect of your life. He was of the view that social justice and equality, these things must be guided by, these things must be, these things must be guided by Islamic laws. He emphasized the importance of social justice and equality. He was of the view, he believed that Muslims could not have a successful life if they departed from the principles of their religion. Then, the decline of Muslims and their poor condition is due to divisions amongst the Muslim community. He told that if he told that if Muslims are suffering, if Muslims were suffering, if Muslims were in problems, so it was just because that they have divided themselves. They were not united. So their their division or their lacking unity caused their decline. Next point is their fortunes can be restored only by reviving their faith. He was of the view that only by reviving their faith could they hope to restore their fortunes. They they restored their fortune means they could flourish again. They could get progress again. The last point is the only way for Muslims to survive and flourish in the face of enemies is to have strong faith. Means Muslims should have strong faith on Allah Almighty. And he wrote that the only way in which Muslims community could survive and flourish in the face of enemies was only their faith, to have a strong faith on Allah Almighty. And by keeping this faith in their heart, even they can defeat their enemies, they can fight with their enemies, and they can get their glorious fortune or their glorious past. Now, if you talk about what were the problems of what were the problems facing Muslims, what were the problems that the Muslims of that time facing after the decline of Mughal Empire, and when Mughal Empire got declined, Muslims were in a pitiable conditions. Pitiable means they were so much, you can say, uh, uh, they were not having, they were so poor, they were in poverty, and their condition was so miserable. So after the decline of Mughals, Hindus has all control of machinery of government because of their majority, capability, and industriousness. Hindus were in majority, so when after the decline of Mughal Empire, there was not even a single Muslim ruler who was good and who was loyal to the Muslims. So ultimately, or this was understood that that Hindus got the whole hold of that area because of their majority, because they were capable, because and they were considering themselves the next rulers of India. That's why they they had all the controls of government machinery. Third point is wealth and prosperity are in the hands of Hindus. West wealth and prosperities, everything were concentrated in the hands of Hindus. While on the other hand, Muslims have nothing in their hands except poverty and misery. Muslims were facing the situation that was miserable, and they were in the situation of poverty just because of their own things. And Shah Waliullah was of the view that Muslims could come out of this situation only by keeping their faith and only by giving importance to their faith in Allah Almighty, and by working hard, definitely. How did Shah Waliullah influence Muslims? This is an important thing here. Shah Waliullah promoted his message through his writings and education. He started writing books, he wrote so many books, and he trained many students, and After training the students, he sent them out to promote the message of harmony and unity. And those students promoted the message given by Shah Waliullah, that the message was of harmony and unity, that Muslims should have some harmony, and Muslims should be united if they wanted to have their position back, if they wanted to have their glory back. Third point is translated Quran into Persian, the language used by educated Muslims. Shah Waliullah was the first person in subcontinent who translated Quran into Persian, so that the educated Muslims could read that language and could understand the language and could understand the actual message of Quran and should follow the teachings given in the Quran, because in Arabic it was difficult to understand. So he translated that text of Quran into Persian to make it easy for the people, especially for the Muslims, to understand. Fourth point is basic purpose. Why he was doing this? His basic purpose was to awaken Muslims to the importance of faith and unite them on the name of religion. Basically, he was he was emphasizing the importance of faith, and he was trying to unite Muslims on the name of religion. What he thought that the only link that can join all the Muslim religion is their religion, that is Islam. So Islam can join Islam can unite all the Muslims of the world, especially the Muslims of India. His sons later translated Quran into Urdu. First, earlier it was translated into Persian by Shah Waliullah, but his sons then translated it into Urdu, because Urdu was the language, and the Urdu was the main literary language in northern India. Literary language means the language used in the text, the language used in literature. So this was again a very good step, so that people could understand it. Also urged Muslims to unite in military actions to defeat their enemies and foreign invaders. Uh, as the Mughal Empire disintegrated from attacks and revolts, as the Mughal Empire started declining from the foreign attacks and revolts, Shah Waliullah urged all the Muslims, including those in neighboring countries, not only Indians but all the neighboring countries, he urged all the Muslims to unite in military actions to defeat their enemies and to defeat all the foreign invaders, because Shah Waliullah was of the view that if foreign invaders were here, it means foreign invaders can rule on the whole India, and Muslims would become the slaves of those foreign invaders. So Muslims should not become the invaders. They should be they should have their glory back. So this was the exact words of the text in inverted commas. This text is the exact wording of Shah Waliullah, who was expressing his fears to Ahmad Shah Abdali in a letter. Who is Ahmad Shah Abdali? Ahmad Shah Abdali was an Afghan king who came here, who attacked India many times, and who looted India many times. But Muslims, after the decline of Mughal Empire, Muslims wanted a Muslim ruler on them. So that's why many Muslims, including Shah Waliullah, wanted Ahmad Shah Abdali from Afghanistan, because he was Muslim. So many people, including Shah Waliullah, wanted Ahmad Shah Abdali to come to India to rule them. So what was his wording? His wording was, if God forbid domination by infidels continues. Infidel means the foreign invaders or the non-believers. If the domination by infidels continues, Muslims will forget Islam and within a short time become such a nation that there will be nothing left to distinguish them from non-Muslims. He was of the view that a time will come when Muslim and non-Muslims will be just like each other. There will be no uh, dis, there will be no, you can say, discrimination, and no one can distinguish them from non-Muslims if the domination by the infidels continues. So this is how Muslims Muslims were influenced by Shah Waliullah, because of his teachings, because of his message, because of his importance of faith. because of his good purpose, because of his uh, efforts to unite Muslims, because of his writings, because of his education, because of his trained students and his sons, Muslims were influenced by Shah Waliullah this way. The last point here is why is Shah Waliullah an important figure in Pakistan's history? Why why he is considered an important history if we talk about the history of Pakistan? The first point is he restored the confidence of Muslims when they were divided, disorganized, and demoralized. At the times when Muslims were divided, disorganized, and demoralized, this was the time after Mughal Empire started to decline. At this time, when Muslims were divided and disorganized and demoralized, and they were having no leader, no spiritual leader, no political leader, so he restored the confidence of Muslims by teaching them and by telling the importance of their faiths. Second point is he provided an alternative reason for pride and optimism when Mughal emperors lost their respect. At the times when Mughal emperor lost their respect, he was the person. Shah Waliullah was the person who provided an alternative reason for pride and optimism. What was that alternative reason for pride and optimism? That was their faith and that was their religion. That was the unity. So he considered the unity, he considered the faith as the reason for their optimism. Optimism means positivity. When there was negativity everywhere, Shah Waliullah spread positivity and optimism. Third point, why Shah Waliullah is an important figure? Third point is the price of failure would be the destruction of their identity. It means if Muslims got failed, means their identity would be destroyed. They 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 would be just like non-Muslims, and no one can distinguish. So the price of failure would be equal to the destruction of their identity. Fourth point is Muslims' identity, culture, and interests are quite different from other people living in India. Basically, this is the base of two nation theory. Two nation theory means uh, Hindus and Muslims are two different people. They are having different identity, they are having different culture, they are having different religion, they are having different customs, they are having different interest. So, two nations cannot live in one country. His idea, Shah Waliullah's idea, was the base of two nations theory, and later this two nation theory was presented by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. But his ideas was just like that. Like Muslim identity, culture, and interest are quite different from the other people of different religions living in India. Second last point is his ideas motivated Muslims and his influence remained even after his death. Muslims were motivated by all his ideas, and even his influence remained after his death, and he was appreciated and praised by so many people. His long-term importance is that many supporters of Pakistan movement who later took up the cause of two nations with a distinct Muslim state believed that they were building on his ideas. Two nation theory was built on his ideas. As I told you, two nation theory. So this was all about Shah Waliullah. Shah Waliullah. We discussed Shah Waliullah as what what as according to Shah Waliullah, what should be the role of Islam in our life, and what was the problems that Muslims were facing at the time of Shah Waliullah. How did Shah Waliullah influence Muslims, and at the end we discussed why is Shah Waliullah an important figure in Pakistan's history. This was all about Shah Waliullah's life, his efforts, and his teachings, and Muslims got so much motivated and inspired, and Muslims were influenced by his teachings, and Muslims started to praising him, and his influence remained even after his death. Now, this is your turn. You all are supposed to write two questions on your history notebook. First one is according to Shah Waliullah, how important was Islam to people's lives? So, as I told you, the role of Islam, what should be the role of Islam in our life? you can explain this point in your own words in the answer of first question. Talking about second question, how did Muslims benefit from the life of Shah Waliullah? Muslims, how Muslims got benefit? What were the benefits? What was the positive things? What were the inspirations that Muslims got? And how Muslims were influenced by Shah Waliullah? And why Shah Waliullah is an important figure in the history of Pakistan? You are supposed to add these details in the answer of second question. So guys, that's it from my side today. Inshallah, we will be with you with a new topic in next lesson. So thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.